here. It's like mid conversation,
All
and then
right.
I want to hear what Deegan's talking
Sure,
about.
sure, sure, sure.
It's all yours.
Oh, here we are. Oh, you
Yeah.
want me to read it right now? Okay, well. All right, guys. I came serendipitously. There's your vocabulary word for the day. I came across. I follow this guy, Rolf Deegan. You want me to share it? I'll just share the thing for you if you want. Hang on.
Sure. Can't go wrong with sharing.
Yeah, sharing is caring, right?
I'm big on the Tim Pool format of just reading the news on camera.
Yeah, I know. That's all you got to do, man. Just what is it? It was sublet.
Yeah.
Let's see. Subcontract. That's what you have to do. Where did it go?
Yeah, everybody here, I know you guys know all the players. You know Rich, you know
Everybody
Troy,
knows
you know Carl, you know Sterling.
Welcome to the conversation, gentlemen.
Yeah.
All right, here it is. This is it. I'll just read it to you. It is okay. So this is Rolf Deegan. I put this on. This is my response to or my retweet, but I'll just dig into Rolf's here. It says this is a paper on the academic values of professors from the political left and political right of the scientific publishers would and would not buy. This is it's also there's also a thing for Psychology Today here. This is it's basically research that determines like emotionalism in men and women. So it says that paper inspired by a visit to our campus from NYU's John Haidt was a bit surprising to us, so controversial that we rejected it by nearly 10 different academics, blah, blah, blah. Let's keep going here. Okay, so it says we surveyed nearly 200 academics from around the U.S. and asked them to rate the degree to which they prioritize each of the 5 academic values. Relatively conservative professors valued academic rigor and knowledge advancement more than did relatively liberal professors. Okay. There's some backstory to this. I'll tell you in just a second. Relatively liberal professors valued social justice and student emotional well-being more so than did relatively conservative professors. Professors identifying as female, also tended to place relative emphasis on social justice and emotional well-being relative to professors who identified as male. Business professors placed relative emphasis on knowledge and advancement and academic rigor, while education professors placed relative emphasis on social justice and student emotional well-being. Regardless of these other factors, relatively agreeable professors tend to place higher emphasis on social justice and emotional well-being of students. So what I was talking about here, yeah, so what you're looking at here is you're looking at the difference between male and female interpretations of emotion. So when you look at who are college professors, well, we know 78% of college professors are female right now. So that was
worldwide, or is that the U.S.?
I know that's in the U.S. I don't necessarily know about worldwide, but I would say that it's probably comparable. It's certainly more than half, let's just say.
Jesus, Troy, is Oxford? Are they full of chicks in Oxford too, or they still got the old guard?
Not as far as I know. I think they've still got the old guard. I think it's pretty well spread, to be honest, as she said.
Right.
Well, here, what are your guys' thoughts on that, Rich? I always love your hot takes on it because they're so blunt and to the point.
Yeah, my hot takes either loved or hated, right? Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, you really can't argue with those facts. It's just the trend that we're heading in as far as who's doing all the educating. It's whatever.
Well, I made this point in book 4, which by the way is coming out next month. Haha, hello. And I was really kind of debating on whether or not I should include it in this book, but I kind of had to because I really feel like the where we're headed right now, if we're not already there, really, as we globalize and we become more of a global society, like an online society, we're beginning to see just how emotionalism influences people's decision making, their political alignment, their religion, their dating for sure. That certainly applies to the red pill. But I had to include parts of this series of essays I wrote called Instinct, Emotion, and Reason. And the reason I had to do that is because I see emotionalism today as almost a form of a new religion. So we prioritize emotion above everything else, and that is a direct result of 4 generations of raising boys and girls in an emotional primary way. because when we teach, like I was just saying before, at least here in the US, 78% of the teachers you will have from preschool until you get to postgraduate work will be female. And if you look at the people who are, if you look at the enrollment rates for higher education, it is overwhelmingly female right now. Men aren't even enrolling in college, much less going and being outnumbered by women there. And we're seeing this sort of play out right now because everybody's staying at home and losing their jobs, or they have to do their work from home kind of thing. And you can see this emotionalism that is where everyone defaults to. So when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, women are in their cars going, I can't believe this guy. Who's going to protect Roe v. Wade? You know, and that's the emotion. That's the instant emotional response, as if the Supreme Court of the United States only exists to like protect, you know, abortion rights here in the United States. But it's this emotional response, and we tend to focus on women. But in this show, I want to focus on guys, because guys have been brought up in that and educated and acculturated and socialized within that emotionalism that's been part of westernizing exported Western culture for at least since the 1970s.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Sterling, I used to come from pickup. Carl and I were just talking about that, and I'm going to give you an opening line here. Hey, who do you think's more emotional, men or women? I gotta be back with my friends in a minute, so we gotta be quick.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now who's more emotional. Pussy little bitch ass men. That's who's more emotional right now.
Whoa, his coffee's strong.
Seriously, like all the because my experience is a little bit different to everyone else's, because when I'm rolling around on Twitter, you guys have somewhat logical people in your Twitter feed.
No.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
No. All right, fine. Maybe who was stepping here?
I have rational men in mine.
Yeah, very rational men in yours. All these guys who like all these sort of white knights, all these simps that we see like subscribing to OnlyFans girls accounts and things now. The kinds of guys that would send. I think I saw a picture of yours recently, Rich. You said you put a picture on your Twitter of like some DM a dude sent you.
Oh, the one I got this morning from Slytherin.
It's like these guys are like, they see a man like saying an unflattering truth about a woman, and then they jump in there like, you're the devil, you're everything that's evil in this world. You're like, it's man.
He literally called you the devil, didn't he?
Step back and have like a rational thought for 5 seconds without like jumping to an emotional conclusion.
I get picked up by all kinds of people, and they go and share my posts or tweets or something like that on some private group, and then the outrage mob all gets together, and then they start DMing you. It's like it's probably the most feminized sort of behavior.
Man, you put out one book and you're the devil. How did that happen? I was the devil for a long time. I'm happy to pass the crown over to you, Rich.
Bro, I was getting slammed before just on tweets alone.
Do you miss the old days when it was single moms shitting on you?
I honestly don't know what's worse. Is it the feminized single mommies, or is it the white knights that the single mommies won't bang?
Well, Troy's been egging them on lately. What do you think of the Black Knight ones? The quote's for later, but
I think the White Knight ones are worse, to be honest, because I think that there is some justification. If you are on the receiving end of what you perceive as criticism, then there's justification there. You might come back and you might say your piece. So I can kind of understand the single mums. But the White Knights, I think, is reprehensible, really. And I think those guys just need to get a life, to be honest. I mean, like, if you've got nothing better to do than compose a tweet in response to a Rich Cooper tweet about that, then it's kind of like, come on. Do you know what I mean? Have you honestly got nothing else to do? So I think it's as with many of these things, I think it's the dudes that annoy me more than the women, really. And I mean, by the way, it should be said, this has been said many times before, but certainly me, and I think other people on this panel might agree, the most criticism I ever get is from other dudes. It's not actually from women.
Yes.
It's sometimes you get the odd thing from a woman or a feminist or somebody, but in the main, it's other dudes. And I think that is a problem.
Yeah, I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from women under 30 who aren't hardcore feminists.
who are really hot.
Yeah,
who are really hot.
Too. Like, I get
Oh,
the
I
same
can't
thing as
tell.
well.
I get amazing feedback from 10s who are under 30.
Only 9s and 10s should up my mentions, guys.
Exactly.
All right, well, Rolo gave me this one here, and I'm curious. I'd like you guys to roll with this one where somebody disagreed with you. Go figure.
It came in from the comments, just so everyone knows.
So it's not a guy just selling a brand. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to read it?
Yeah, you might as well. You got a good voice.
Okay, so he's this was actually from Mikhail. I can't remember. Sorry, dude. I can't pronounce your last name here. I disagree with Rolo on this one. Both men and women have been very emotionally driven all throughout history. That's why people shoot cartoonists or kill their wives. Yes, emotion is faster than reason. But if you go and you look at the biological, or if you look at the fMRI studies right now, and I can point you in the I have several of them in book 4. But if you look at fMRI studies and you look at the neurology that we know today, you can see that men and women, we process information differently. We process, like for men, like okay. If we want to talk about emotion, what do women default to when they're in an emotional state? Usually crying. What do men default to in an emotional state? Anger and violence.
Not lately. Crying, I think, is winning out.
Okay. Now I'm going to explain to you why it is that men seem more emotional now than they did. Because for the last 4 or 5 generations, we've taught men to prioritize emotion above reason. So I have to kind of, I promise I'll make this as brief as possible. But like for when I wrote Instinct, Emotion, and Reason, instinct is the fastest way we interpret information around us. And by interpret information, I mean through our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, whatever the 5 senses that are engaged. That's how we process our surroundings. And then in that process, it's how do I feel about it? What can I do with this? How can I use this? Instinct is immediate and is the fastest because it is the one that is most embedded in your hardware. So if I throw an object at Ryan and he dodges out of the way, that's instinctual because it's self-preservation. It's fight or flight, right? It's get out of the way, do this right now. That's the easiest.
Goddamn right.
That's the easiest way to explain instinct. Emotion then is how do I feel about it? And then that's usual. Remember, emotion is not magic. It is not God. It is not cosmic. Whoa, let's send positive juju out into the universe because I love and peace and harmony kind of crap. That your emotional state, I can influence with chemicals. I can influence your emotional state and how you interpret something by tweaking parts of your brain, by tweaking parts of your biochemistry, so that you will feel like when guys are on steroids, right? They get roid rage. Is that a natural response, or is that because are you angry because you're angry about something, or it's injustice in the universe, or is it the fact that you have synthetic testosterone in your bloodstream right now that's prompting you to those feelings?
Yeah, and well, I mean, you and Sterling, that's your whole industry. When you were shilling liquor, that's basically affecting hormones.
Emotion is the easiest thing to appeal to because it's more immediate than reason. Most people, it takes time, and that's the last step here is reason and rationality takes time. You have to learn about it. It's slower. It's more efficient, and it will probably save your life much, much quicker. But those are the 3 interpretive processes for human. Well, actually, for animals as it is anyway. Like higher animals usually go through some sense of those. Animals can learn. So when you look at those processes, the way that women prioritize those processes is instinct, emotion, and reason. For men, it used to be, until recently, instinct, reason, and then emotion. And I can prove this to you because women process emotion, and particularly negative emotions, differently than men do. There's tons of research on this. I can show you the biological reasons for this as well. So when we say, well, men default to emotions right now, and they like Nicholas Cruz, he took a gun and shot up his high school. Yeah, because we've taught generation after generation of young men to override their mental firmware, which is instinct, reason, and then emotion. And instead, because we have a female way of learning, we teach them instinct, emotion, and then reason. And then, so it's always express yourself and be emotional and feel good. And because for women only think like a few emotions exist, and they're the ones that they like the most, like love and happiness and peace and all this other great stuff. Well, anger's an emotion too. They don't want you to express that one, but they do want you to express, love and peace and tolerance.
And horny's an emotion. And that's what I would say. Sterling, you're basically, dude, you're not selling booze, you're selling dopamine essentially. So I'm curious what you've seen like in fields on this one. And I'm also curious how work from home's working out for the porn industry.
It's actually working out surprisingly well.
Wank from home.
Well, you know, more people are sitting at home masturbating during this pandemic than ever before. You can see the statistics on X videos and Pornhub. It's all there.
Dude,
skyrocketing ad revenue for people in my industry.
better than women's
That's the best thing about Pornhub, by the way, is like the blog that they have. No porn on it. It's just all the stats that they have collecting data. Oh my God. Data we've never collected in the history of humanity.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I wanted to touch on something that Roller just mentioned there, like where guys are being taught now, like, oh, you've got to be like, guys get lambasted in society today for not being emotional, for being what you might call stoic, for controlling their emotions, for actually having some degree of control over their emotions. Doesn't mean they're not emotional, but they don't immediately jump to that reaction straight away. And you said something in our group chat earlier this week, Roland, which I found very, very insightful. And it was that Lawrence of Arabia quote.
Oh yeah. Not my that it hurts. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to talk about that.
What was the quote again, Roland?
Oh, okay. It's from Lawrence of Arabia, and it's this part where what does he say? He says something like, "Oh, he does this trick with a I could probably call up the video if you want, but Lawrence of Arabia, he's lighting a cigarette, and he's like very debonair, almost like James Bondish. That he was James Bond before James Bond, right? And he lights a cigarette with a match, right? And then he puts out the match with his fingers, and people are looking at him like you're crazy, right? And this is in the military and all that stuff. So another guy tries to do it and he goes, it bloody well hurts. He goes, yes, I'm sure it does. And he's like walking away and everything. He says, what's the trick? He says, the trick, my dear, or whatever his name is not minding that it hurts.
Bingo.
Is not minding that it hurts. And I know that sounds like, well, where's he coming up with that? That's actually a really profound kind of lesson if you think about it, because everything hurts. Right, you're always gonna get hurt by something, whether it's emotional or physical or whatever, and it's how you are reacting to that hurt. So it's like if you don't mind that it's hurting. I use this with and John, I know John's in the chat here. Maybe he'll come in later on, but it's like when you're breaking up with a girl or you're trying to establish frame, and you think you should be Mr. Nice Guy all the time and Mr. Emotional and Mr. Lovey-dovey all the time. You have to not mind that it hurts to establish frame. To be the guy who's willing to walk away, to be that guy, because walking away, like leaving what you like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, like walking away on principle is like, it's like speaking Swahili to most guys, right? They just don't understand the language. They just don't get it. And so it's like when I was watching that, it's really this kind of thing where it's you have to get to a point, and John Fitch is the perfect guy to talk to about this too, is that you have to not mind that you take the shot on the chin, right? Yeah, it's going to hurt, but you have to, it's kind of like, like, what is it in Rocky 2 where he's like, is that all you got? And he's like taking shot after shot in the jaw. And he's just like so amped up that he doesn't care that it hurts. He's just there to win the fight. He's just there to establish his dominance in that particular situation. So you have to get to a point where you're less concerned about the pain and more concerned about the consequences or what's coming after that. So you have to not mind that it hurts.
Oh yeah, I guess John, you're getting caught up. We were just talking about the Lawrence of Arabia thing where
Sterling will come back.
Sterling, he had to run. I got something that I want to throw up on the screen. Just
ready
to
when you are.
Prove this point. So share. So if you want to see some serious effery, follow this page on Instagram. This is a sort of narrative that they try to convince boys to follow. Like boys will be whatever toxic stereotypes we teach them to believe are true, right? Mm-hmm. Like it is a feed of this nonsense, an ongoing nonsense that's trying to convince women that they can be men, and they're trying to convince men that they need to be less toxic and more feminized. Just
I always report those things,
as you should.
I report them, and there's a thing that says that what our information's untrue.
Oh,
I always
check that.
I always check. I always report them, and they always get taken down off my feed.
Twitter went full Reddit. I'd have to see a source.
They do
on
it to
that,
us. So we might as well do it back to them.
Do it.
Yeah.
One of the funnier things with this to me is that I've worked with a lot of guys in finance, and most people probably don't know that this is a thing. but you can actually go to therapists to become less sensitive to emotions.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys in finance and consulting are starting to do it just because they're realizing that it's not beneficial to a finance guy to be emotionally rattled. It's not good for a consultant to be sensitive to social cues in certain regards. And
Well,
a lot of the ways you can kind of do that is to, if you want to stop being more emotional, you just take a deep breath. You think about the concrete key performance indicators or SMART goals. Like if you can't come up with a SMART goal for it, it's an emotion. If you can't create a SMART goal, it's not an emotion. And I think what we're kind of getting to is that commerce realized that women make emotional decisions more than men. So they want to give more money over to women because that means more purchasing decisions are being made by women, which means more income for the companies. And I think it's really that simple. I don't think it's some overarching plot to kill off the nuclear family and that. I think it's more of a corporations realizing we need to get bigger sales next quarter for the shareholders. So we just have to make sure that the woman is making every single financial decision. And we have to make the guys sensitive enough to start paying $300 for like a small bottle of shampoo like the women do.
Well, that was my question for Troy. It's like, what's detrimental about guys getting emotional here? Oh, Troy, you went mute. Try now.
I mean,
sorry about that. Can you hear me? Oh yeah. Okay. So sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I was really interested in the point that Carl just made, actually, because in my own humble way, this is something that I try to teach in CAD Academy, which is open next week, guys, 1st to the 5th of December. But within that, right? Because I've got this whole section about Dark Triad, and I've been fascinated with the Dark Triad for some time since I wrote that book, How to Be an Arsehole, and I've sort of explored it and looked into it, because one of the fundamental things about that is that, for a start, we know that guys who have Dark Triad characteristics are more successful in business, but also with women as well. Why is that? Well, kind of because of what Carl just said, because if you think of the Dark Triad elements, psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism, right? So psychopathy, people always think about Hannibal Lecter, they think about the serial killer, whatever. But actually, for me, on a more prosaic level, the best way to break it down is to say that the person with those psychopathic tendencies tends to be somebody with less empathy, okay? And actually having empathy or having excess empathy can actually be detrimental, particularly to a guy in situations like business, politics, and also relationships, the dating marketplace. Okay, so if we can, and listen, I mean, you know, I've been all over the scale with this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm probably naturally predisposed to be relatively sensitive around things. I've managed to sort of, you know, kind of erode that over the years, and I believe that you can do it by paying attention to it and by actually, you know, looking at where you're too empathetic and finding ways to turn the dial down a little bit. And by the way, in that great book, The Wisdom of Psychopaths, the author I forget, but somebody will probably put it in the chat. Yeah, that book. He talks about exactly the same thing. He says, you know, there are certain things that we can learn from psychopaths, and one of the key things is, are you too empathetic? And as Carl very rightly says, in business, this is key, particularly the dudes in finance, in the city. You know, those guys just cannot afford that sort of degree of empathy. And it might be the case in the modern dating marketplace that neither can you as well. So it's really something to look at.
It comes down to
I
ruthlessness.
want to add an anecdote here, if you don't mind. Because there's an anecdote that went around with the 2008 financial crisis. It's my favorite one, from the Goldman Sachs currency trading desk. Some guy sent out an email after some dude lost $100 million on a currency bet. And the text of the email was, okay, who lost the hundy? And if you're at that point, you're in very much emotional control.
Oh, hundy for 100,000. All right, fair enough. All right, Johnny.
No, 100 million.
Oh, 100 million.
Go, John.
I mean,
Yeah, Johnny, so you were saying?
It comes down to like the ruthlessness, I think. You know, I mean, all those dark triad traits come down to, you know, are you able to pull the trigger when push comes to shove, you know, regardless of people's feelings?
Yes. But also as well, and I think John, you could probably confirm this. This is something to do with testosterone, also, isn't it? Because if when your T is high, when your testosterone is spiking, you are just naturally more dark tri because you just give less of an F, right? You're
more decisive. You're more. I'm going to do this right now. You're not really even thinking about how is this affecting everybody else.
What's it?
Very goal oriented, laser focus.
Yeah. What's it like when you're in a fight? Do you get into that? Like flow state within the setup of the fight where you're just like, it's almost like your brain is disengaged. You're just like, I'm doing whatever.
You better be.
Yeah.
If you're thinking your way through it in the middle of it, you're in a bad spot.
Well, how do you tap into it outside of a fight?
Man, I'm reading that book, Stealing Fire right now. It's all about that flow states and how people can tap into it more. I mess around a little bit with microdosing, and that seems like it's a very surefire way to flip you into a flow state. But I think years of competition, years of training, like I easily fall into flow states. Like
when you say microdosing, do you mean like psilocybin? What are you talking about here?
With the microdosing psilocybin, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you fall into a flow state within a fight itself, though?
It's kind of a requirement because like you're programming your body through training in a training camp, and then when it's fight time, it's time to like let the machine take over.
Yeah.
So you kind of fall back into this. I don't know, man. This you're behind yourself a little bit. In the fight, you're somewhere else. Time doesn't really feel the same. Those 5 minutes. A minute could feel like 30 seconds, and then the 5 minutes feels like an hour. So it's a weird, distorted situation. But I think there's a lot of ways you can tap into that. I call it's kind of like a lateral drift almost. Where your body's engaged in something, but your mind's able to go other places. In the fight, like your mind is focused and directed in a path. So if you've prepared yourself, you should go down that path pretty well. But like if you're just freely doing whatever, like I used to wash dishes, and it's a very mechanical operation. You don't have to think much about it. So my mind was able to kind of just go off into different places and go deep and figure out, what I was trying to get to. I think there was a lot of success in my fighting career because I had those moments, 3 days a week for a few years where like I just was forced into this deep meditative state washing dishes.
I think you answered Thought Terminator's super chat right there accidentally. Because he's asking why approaching is energy. I got two super chats here, and then we're going to continue on with this. Why is approaching energy draining? I get fatigued after 3 to 4.
Well, approaching is an emotional.
You're being your best self. It's like doing an interview. If you do interviews all day, you're being the best version of yourself. You're like that's a workout, man.
It's an emotional expenditure as well because you're putting yourself in front of a girl you presumably think is attractive, and then there's a decent chance she's going to tell you to F off, and that takes it out of you. And it's also a bit like, people who do live streaming will say if you're sitting in front of a camera and you're talking for a period of time, that is quite draining. And it's not just the physicality of it because you're just sitting in a chair, right? But it's like you're sort of the center of attention. And it's almost the same thing on a micro level with an interaction with a girl because it's you got to amp yourself up, you got that adrenaline. You walk it, you go into the thing, you don't know how it's going to go. Maybe she tells you where to go. That feels bad. Maybe she is, she likes you, and then that kind of spikes your dopamine. But it's all tiring. It's all draining stuff because it's a very emotional roller coaster type of experience.
Fair enough.
Can you just add to that?
Well, this is just my take on it, but when you're running game, am I the only one that feels like you're kind of in a state like it's similar to fighting in that you're also kind of hyper focused on the girl in question because you're trying to pick up on all their body language, you're trying to pick up on cues to continue the conversation. So you're also being very focused on what she's doing. So you're paying attention at a much deeper level than you would be like having a conversation with a random person.
That's true. And actually, Tom Torero used to talk about flow state when he was doing day game, and he would literally go, do a 2-hour day game session, and he would go into flow state because it was his craft, if you like. But the other thing, what you're talking about, you really want to create that bubble with you and the girl. You're having the conversation with the girl, and this could be in the coffee shop or in the lounge bar or wherever it is, standing in front of the girl, and you want to almost phase everything out. So you're almost not aware of what's happening around you peripherally. It's just you and the girl. And you're right, that is in itself draining as well.
What were you saying on there just a second ago, Rich?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you will typically find things to be draining or to feel like energy vampires if you don't really fully enjoy immersing yourself into it. Like, the example like streaming, like, I don't enjoy setting up before the train wreck and setting up the event and the thumbnail and all that sort of stuff. But when I'm in the show, I can do that. Like, I can do that for 60 minutes, like 90 minutes, whatever. I can just keep going. But if you don't enjoy it, then stop doing it is the way that I would kind of put it, right? I mean, if you find that you want to do more cold approaches and you like women, you're probably struggling with the actual process or, the rejections or even the way that you're having the conversations with them. But at the end of the day, like, you have to find joy in the stuff that you're doing, 100%.
All right. I'll knock out Jake Pliskin's here. This one's easy. In the military, guys are susceptible to manipulation because it's easier. There's no fancy thing to it. The military wants you married because married guys don't leave the military because they have a family to take care of.
Ooh.
And they set you up in positions where you got a ton of money and very little time to make stupid decisions with it.
Yeah,
You know what's funny?
plantation.
I did a video last week and I was talking about the military because it was just after Remembrance Day. Well, actually, I did it closer to that date. And I noticed a lot of dudes in the comments said, join the military, but don't get married, don't have a wife or a steady girlfriend. Basically, don't get involved with any kind of woman on a long-term basis if you do that. So that's a little bit counter to that narrative, actually.
Oh, yeah. That's the greatest advice. Most guys end up getting suckered in. That's how they stick you, though. As soon as you pop out a kid, they know they got you for life. And then DaCosta here, whatever. A chance to fluff Rich, I'll take it. Thanks for getting the book out finally. Had to jab him in there, didn't you? Looking forward to it. Rolo, when can we expect you? Dude, these guys
you're
are
up now.
fucking ravenous, man.
Wales.
I'm still waiting for my galley copy to come. So
You know that you're not, fully there until Aaron Cleary starts making fun of you and doing.
Then you
Oh, it took you 30 years, man.
I wanted to sort of chime in on that military thing because I think this sort of taps into what John was talking about too. As people, if you follow my Instagram, you know that I used to, anyways, do professional. I used to do competitive fencing back in the day, and the way that I got good at it was I trained. First of all, I dropped foil altogether, and then I picked up a saber and epee because I was more aggressive than I was sort of like fluid and nuanced, I guess. And so I started fencing saber, and I got really good at it to the point where I could get like I got a B rating for saber. But the reason I got good at it is because I trained with a guy who was a Belgian like fencing master or whatever, and he told me you need to get the eye of the tiger. You need to, and of course he was speaking American, right? And I'm like, he's like, you need the killer instinct. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says you have to be unafraid to hurt the guy on the opposite end of the strip. I know that you have like a mask on and you have a lame on and you've got this weapon is, blunted, whatever, all that other stuff. You have to still look at that guy across the strip from you and be willing to hurt that guy. And I think that most guys get to a point where, or like most men, like I said, like 85% of guys are beta. And they don't want to hurt anybody. They want to go along to get along. They don't want to be competitive. And you have to sort of reach down and get that killer instinct. And so when it comes to the military, what the military used to do was toughen up men to get the killer instinct. You had to be able to pull the trigger on somebody. You had to be willing. I mean, it's easier when you have a gun. It's another thing when you have to go and beat the crap out of them, right, John? It would be different if you had ammunition between you and them. But when it comes to mano a mano, that's the guy who's more aggressive, the guy who's more violent. That's usually the guy that's going to win.
There's a book that talks about that. I think it's On Killing, and it's like this military psychologist.
It's a cheery read.
And he
Christmas present.
Yeah, and he interviewed all these soldiers who had killed people, and he was talking about it. And he thought one of the things he talked about was it's not a normal thing for animals to want to kill their own species. Mm-hmm. So one of the things he was talking about was I think Civil War. It was like one in 5 guys would actually shoot to kill. Like they would either shoot at the ground, they'd shoot in the air, or they found a bunch of muskets that were loaded like 5 or 6 times and never shot. And then there was a certain group of guys who would load the guns and hand them to the guys that would shoot. So like this percentage of like only 20% of people willing to kill lasted until the Vietnam War, until they started they're doing their training methods differently. They started using different language, starting calling people a target instead of a person.
Oh yeah, you're talking about killology.
You eliminate the target rather than you're killing a person. They use moving targets. They use things that popped up, different things that like retrain them people to be able to be killing machines. And they sent them off to Vietnam to do this, but they forgot to like deprogram them when they sent them back, and that's why everybody was like so messed up coming back from Vietnam.
Jesus,
But it's
Johnny,
just
looking
interesting
sharp
that
today, though, buddy.
It's cold in the garage.
Camp is here! Camp is here!
Yeah, I'm freezing in my mother's basement over here.
Sir, let's get you caught up. Let's hear your thoughts on it. We were talking about, are men more emotional than women? And why do people want guys emotional? We were just on now about like what's detrimental about guys getting emotional here.
Oh, just
Where to
emotionally
start?
reacting to anything is not good. Just such a life lesson in general. I don't know. I see guys getting caught up. For me, the thing that kills me is when I know a girl's like a hoe and the guy's just so caught up with her emotionally. I'm like, dude, she's not worth it. Like, you're just
It blinds
giving
you.
pearls to swine.
Well, that was my question for Rich and Carl. You're like I guess technically everybody, but you guys are the business guys when you think of this thing here. Business and emotions. How badly do they mix?
Badly. You can't, like, the most unsuccessful business owners I've seen get emotional about everything. They have a big hissy fit and they spaz and they can't focus. They can't concentrate. They're not productive. Every little tiny obstacle that shows up in their day, blocks their path to happiness. Somebody said to me once when I was younger in my 20s, they said, look, if you want to be successful in life, you have to learn how to control your emotions. And as a guy, I believe that's very, very true.
Well, actually, Robert Greene says that, doesn't he? In what was the last book? The Human Nature one?
Human Nature, yeah.
Yeah, he says
I
that.
haven't gotten to that one yet.
I think he says it towards the beginning of that book. He's like, basically, those people who are able to live in the rational rather than the emotional will have more successful lives in general. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he makes that point very clearly.
And the reason for that is because like most people live in the emotion. Now I'm not saying, I'm not talking about like instantaneous sort of like biological reactions here. I'm talking about like living your life, like basing your life theory and your values and whatever you invest your ego into. Yeah, exactly. It's right now, and I've had this conversation with Campbell and Dr. Everett Piper before, where they were saying, we live in the age of feels before reals. I'm like, yes, I 100% agree with you. How do we get? How did that happen? And
I think it's just a counter
Feminized
reaction.
everything.
I think it's a counter reaction because we went from being 100% emotional back during the Dark Ages for the most part. It was all about religion, and religion is inherently about emotion. And then we swapped during the Renaissance and the Enlightenment to become a very rational-based society. And we kind of went towards that. Jordan Peterson calls it order, and I kind of like that take on it. We went from an emotional order to a rational order. And then we went and we hit the boomers. They wanted no order whatsoever because they'd been constrained by their kind of hard ass parents from the Greatest Generation. So they kind of cast off everything old and went with the new thing. And part of that was everything was supposed to be emotional. If you read the history of like the hippie period, it's all peace and love. It's nothing rational behind it. It's basically drop acid, listen to ZZ Top, have sex, and enjoy your moment. And I'm all in favor of all those things. I'm just saying they're not good if you're running a business or governing a country.
Am I the only guy who doesn't like ZZ Top?
I don't like them.
Yes. ZZ Top's a bomb, man. Anybody spinning their guitar around like that is dope.
Not American. Definitely not American.
I'll be
Man,
born
how
and
you
die a Rush man. Rush is better than ZZ Top.
Well, I mean, but so let me just insert this in here because we've been talking about combat and everything. I mean, really, we want to talk about like who's manipulating men emotionally right now. And I think that because we live in an age of emotion, in the age of feels before reals, because we develop our political policy around prioritizing emotion above reason, we have at least, I would argue, at least the last 2, maybe 3 generations of, at least in Western societies, of this prioritizing and placing emotion above everything else. And that's why I refer to this in book 4. Emotionalism is a religion. It's this all inclusive. Let's all come into the drum circle and sing Kumbaya. And it's I made this comparison in the book. I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in I think it was 2017, 2018, there was a Catholic church that was in San Francisco, and it was like sort of this failing Catholic church. And then they had the Beyonce interfaith worship service, and it was standing room only in there because it was like, oh, it doesn't matter what religion you are, everybody come in, we're all just going to let our freak flags fly, and we're going to sing feminist Beyonce songs. And it was, like I said, it was one of the most popular things I ever did because it was all emotional. It was all about hyping all that up. It was about inclusion. It was all about this. It's just everybody show up, and it was basically a nightclub, right? They turned a church into a nightclub. And it was all really based on the ideas of appealing to really feminine primary emotions. So when we look at how women process emotion, we look how men process emotion. If you extrapolate that into like a social movement, if you extrapolate that into politics, it's exactly what we have right now, to the point where emotionalism is our religion. So it doesn't matter what religion you believe in, as long as it feels good. As long as it's your truth, it's all subjective. Your truth, right? As long as it feels good to you. And that works. And I 100% agree with Carl. It does work. It does sell. That's why women are the primary consumers in Western societies. They control 90% of the wealth. They will complain that they make less money, but they spend more money than men do. It's not about who's making it. It's about who's spending it. And how do we appeal to those who are spending it? Well, wouldn't it be great if we could make men more like women so they would spend too? So that they would be more emotional, so that they would make emotional decisions and prioritize emotion before reason. How can we do that? Well, we got all these women that are already in these very low paying, public education sectors. Why don't we have them teach the next generation of boys to be good humans, right? Like what Rich was saying, like that tweet.
Consumers.
Yeah. We want them to be good feminized consumers, and they're already 80% there. All I have to do is just make sure that we drive them down the right street and keep the guys who are the 20%ers, keep the alphas for breeding, but keep the rest of them as good consumers and good producers. And how do we do that? Turn them into women.
Well, I mean, one thing that could be said.
Shit test.
One thing that could be said.
One well orchestrated shit test.
Feminism is one big shit test.
Yeah, one thing that could be pointed out is how men's fashion and men's grooming. And listen, I mean, I'm on board with this guy, so I'm an exemplar. I'm not sort of saying anything against it per se, but look at like dudes' fashion and look at dudes like grooming and all this kind of stuff now as compared to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, I remember when I was a kid growing up, it was still very sort of like, guys would just wear very sort of basic stuff. And I think going any further than that in general would be sort of like frowned upon a little bit. Now, today in 2020, and, I know this is the case in the States, in the UK, we've got dudes from areas that you would commonly regard as being sort of like working class, sort of the earth areas, dressed up to the nines. I mean, go to Essex, kind of working class-ish sort of, although there's money there as well, but, it's a typically sort of stereotypical working class place off the outside the east of London. The guys there absolutely dressed up to the nines, beautiful jackets, well fitted, like really, really tightly fitting stuff. They use moisturizer, they use, all of this kind of stuff. And that really, really is a new thing. I mean, certainly if you go back to my grandfather's generation, that wouldn't have been the case at all. So men are becoming now more consumers than they were before, and we've seen that even over the last like 5 years or so. It's just increasing all the time.
To Troy's point, Ryan, just chuck that up on the screen.
Done and done.
There it is, right? A manly man, also a manly man. Again, from the legendary feminist Instagram page, masculinity is a social construct.
Well, I don't know about the way.
False information.
Almost a million likes on that. Like that just goes to show you what kind of engagement this kind of nonsense gets out there, right?
Well,
it's so blatantly propaganda.
I mean,
just
yeah,
can't
like
believe
what
people
are
care.
these girls? What woman who like that is going out with a guy in a dress?
They aren't, but by
If
then,
a guy in a
they've
dress-
bought his
Well,
product.
Harry
Approach
Styles
her-
would get laid if he smeared himself with dog shit. Like, let's be
Exactly.
honest. But the average guy can't
Like-
put on a dress and turn on women.
Yeah, what I was talking
totally-
about wasn't quite the going as far as wearing a dress. I was talking about more just like dudes, but they're wearing very, very tailored clothes and very fitted clothes and stuff. But the dress thing, the dress thing, I admit, is a step forward. But like we were saying last week, I mean, I think Harry Styles, he can do what the hell he wants. I don't see it being picked up on a very widespread scale yet in this country, at least. Do you know what I mean? But maybe it's the shape of things to come. I don't know.
Well, that's how
I
they
just
sell
think
you on
it's- you're
social
gonna see
media.
I do think you're going to see some ticks up in grooming just on the basis that we can see now we have guys in the manosphere slinging beard oil and razors.
But they're the true alphas, aren't they? They're the trads.
But you have to look at it from this perspective that men traditionally bought items that would make their life better, that were like one-time purchases that you had forever.
Mm.
Like most of my dad's tools, for instance, he's had those for 20 years.
Yeah.
Most of my grandfather's crap, we're still finding my grandfather's crap everywhere when we go and try and look through his shit, because it's like, okay, he bought this thing back in 1919. Fucker still works.
Still works.
So, but now they have to kind of dial over to that consumption type of product where you have to go through like a bottle of shampoo every 2 days, a bottle of beard oil every 2 days. That's a crack addict right there.
They don't want you to own anything. You're gonna have to start renting that stuff soon.
Talk about people treating things like
Yeah,
crap.
that's actually a very good observation, because you'll start to notice, the narrative will be, the future will be a place where you have access to everything and own nothing. And I think that one of the core concepts of masculinity and manhood is the acquisition of assets,
Ownership.
real estate, resources.
I want my
that
shit.
sort of stuff. Yeah, like I want to own my
I worked
car.
hard. I worked hard for it. I want.
Yeah,
my
like
shit.
I don't want to put it on Turo and have a bunch of plebs driving.
Yeah,
the crap
get
out
your
of
hands
my
off my shit.
Right. Yeah.
Let me drop in on that one. I'll tell you why that is too.
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
because that's the way men evolved. We had to do that. Resource acquisition was one way. Well, actually,
What
sometimes
made you
the
attractive,
only
yeah.
way
Mm.
a guy could reproduce. That is solving your reproductive problem. To be a man in our evolutionary past was to acquire more resources than you could possibly expend, because that way, and be generous enough to with your wives or concubines so that you could have a family and start a tribe kind of thing. And that's where that comes from. And I know, Rich, you've read Alpha God. There's a section in Alpha God where he talks about that's what primates do, and that's what men have done for since the time of the Old Testament, right? I mean, way back in the day, that's what guys do, because that's what made a man. That's what made you a high value guy, to have a lot of women around, to have a lot of resources, to have a lot of territory, and be able to defend it as well. Kind of like most male animals, like lions and gorillas and wolves, and you got to be able to defend your territory. You've got to be able to take that territory. You've got to have those resources, because that's what made you a high value guy back in the day, because you had to be able to kick ass and be able to defend that stuff. Also, we needed to know paternity, and so we need to know that the kid is ours. Because women's mating strategy, or females, animals' mating strategy, is basically cuckoldry. It's basically promiscuity, and to select the best genes and to select the best provider. And even if those two don't match, then you've got to find methodologies to get to those things. That, in turn, influenced male animals, mammals, whatever, our mating strategy to make sure that we can take territory, we can ensure resources, and we know the damn kids are ours. That's why when capitalism seems very innate and natural to men. That's why when we think about individualism, that's why we think about those things in male terms. When we think about socialism, when we think about communitarianism, that's for the women who are the gatherers back at the tribe picking berries, right? Those are the guys. That's for the women who are interdependent upon each other to make sure that the children are raised, to band together and do what they can, because they are the most vulnerable sex. They are the most vulnerable sex because they have to. It takes 9 months for a woman to gestate their babies, and it takes from 0 to like about 8 or 9 years old for a child to become independent. That is what inspires and embeds communitarianism in women's psyches. That is part of their firmware. So when we look at things of like emotionalism versus reason, that's why men have a natural proclivity for reason, while women have a natural proclivity for emotion and communication and everything else. That's that's where they head. That's what they
we
do.
have to, and because they can afford to.
We can still see it in the careers that they choose and the careers that men choose. Women are interested in people, and men are interested in things. That's why, because it promoted our best interests in reproduction. We had to have all that stuff.
So here's my question for you guys as a panel here.
No, I would like to make an argument to Rolo here just for a second.
Yeah.
I disagree with the past tense on we used to gather resources, used to have to defend them. We still do. It's just different means. Instead of having soldiers, you have lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having advisors, you have lobbyists. Instead of having armies, you buy a couple politicians. It's the same game. It's just being played on a different board.
On a bigger scale, yes. And that's why Rich Cooper says, I want my stuff. That's why John Fitch says, I want know that my stuff is my shit is my shit, right? Property. The idea of property is being challenged right now. Like you were saying, John, like I was saying, you're going to rent your shit. And if you want something, it'll just fly to you on a drone or some shit like that. Right. Like that seems very alien and very foreign to guys who are like, no, man, I want to know that, I would like to be able to own my own house so I can do what I want to with my own territory, my own land. That's why guys are attracted to that kind of stuff. Ownership is something that is, I think, endemic to all humans, but certainly to male humans, because we want to know. We have I think we did you and I, Ryan, we did was it on my podcast where we were talking about a sense of ownership and how, like, why do guys get possessive of their women? Like, you can't own her. Oh, it was you don't own her, or it's she was never yours. It was just your turn.
Yeah, it was on your show. It was after I did the one against Somnez there.
That's the intersexual dynamics version of what John's talking about right now. I want to know my shit is my shit.
Yep.
Here's the here's an interesting thing about how they've slowly started to erode away ownership and kind of remove that option from guys. And I think one of the things that most guys don't notice, and there's a lot of condo owners out there too. Ryan's on the panel; he's a condo owner, but I got a couple of units down in the city that I rent out. And one of the things that I kind of came across is you don't actually have a lot of rights when you own a condo, like as a property owner. You essentially own the paint on the wall and everything that's on the inside of that. You don't even own the fucking walls, right? And it's not like you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, travel whenever you want.
Gotta get approval.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like,
changes.
slowly but surely. I mean, like, even in my own home right now, I remember there was a notice sent out by the local town recently that said, oh, if you have your house on Airbnb, you've got to sign up for this license and pay a $5,000 a year annual fee. Otherwise, we're going to lien your property taxes. And they keep removing slowly but surely from everybody in society, access to rights as far as what your ownership levels look like. They just slowly whittle away at it decade by decade.
Yeah,
right?
and so it's reasonable a lot of the time. That's the part that gets me. So like the condo.
Well, they make it so reasonable, right? It's like,
the Renos one is because idiots are screwing up the
Hitler
building and it
said.
fucks us over.
Well, it's the same thing with expropriation of property, because suddenly everyone's like, yeah, we need to expand this road, so we're going to take like 4 feet of your property on this side, and you're like, yeah, well, that's kind of okay, because like that road's been annoying me for ages because I can't pass fuckers on it. So you're like, yeah, that's okay, but should that even be a law? I'm from the perspective that, okay, they should be able to say that, okay, for the common good, we need to take this piece of property, but they should have to pay you like market price multiplied by like 1.4 for your inconvenience.
Yeah, it is government. They should be paying that anyway.
Yeah. I mean, is it the same situation here in the UK? You don't actually really own the flat or the apartment as such. You own the lease. You own
you guys.
you own the lease. So effectively, you own a bit of paper that says this is the lease, and the lease will run out after a period of time. Some leases are very long, so you can have like a 1,000-year lease, but sometimes it's 100 years. When it starts getting below 80 years, it becomes an issue, and you have to renew the lease because otherwise the value of the property goes right down. So sometimes in like expensive parts of London, you'll get a property that seems really, really cheap. And then you look into it, and the reason it's so cheap is because the lease has expired or is close to expiration. And that means you're going to have to spend like a couple of million in order to renew that lease.
Oh yeah,
so
we're not as bad as Britain, where we have that like the Queen still owns everything thing.
Well, you own freehold with freestanding houses, but apartments here it's a really strange situation. And like you're saying, you can't do anything to it. You can't knock a wall down or, do anything structural to it at all. So it's a very constrained form of ownership.
It is. Well, I mean, condos are essentially a corporation. It's a corporation and we're all shareholders for
Every
it.
single one, yeah.
So, and that's kind of it's the same as like if you're running a business. You can't say, I can't do whatever I want with my business. What the hell? Well, yeah, no, you went, public shares, and you went public. So yeah, you have responsibilities. And I'm with Rich. At the end of the day, I would much rather err on the side of let me do what I want. But at the same time, I understand that negotiation needs to happen over who's responsible for what. But yeah, you can go way too far. Like what they're doing right now with the dude in Etobicoke, basically telling him when he can and cannot open his business and what risk tolerance he has to have for a pandemic. I don't like those overreaches.
And look at what that provokes in guys. Look at the emotion that provokes in guys. When you tell a guy, no, you can't do what you like, you can't keep your shit, right? Your shit is really not your shit. And we're gonna arrest you and take you away from the business that you developed. God knows, I don't know how long that guy was doing that. But it's when you take that away from guys, that's when guys lose their shit. That's when they lose their shit, right?
Did you guys see the video clip of the police hauling that guy away? And I think there was either one or two guys side by side, but the whole time the police were walking him to the cruiser, there was another guy yelling, going, shame, shame, like a woman. Right?
Oh, I know. There's a bunch of those.
Even their response to it is quite feminized too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and because Rich, we're looking at a generation of guys, at least the last 3 generations of guys, who have been conditioned to see the feminine imperative, to see to see the female experience as the correct experience. That's the way that they should.
You're supposed to see their own emotions through the lens of a female,
right? And that's exactly Ryan. I put that in the private chat. One guy in here says dehumanize, like to be more male is to be less human, right? To be more dark triad is to be why do we say that? Why do we define humanness in a female correct lens?
Yeah, because being dark triad is just as human as being soft and cuddly, right? They're both just different aspects of being human.
Well, that's the highest aspiration a guy can be.
Being dark triad hurts women's feelings.
Well, can I go on like a long ass rant here? Because like it used to be like one of my favorite animations I've ever seen was someone who did the map of Europe from like year 0 until the modern day. And it's really only been like 50 years where that thing has been static. The other 1950 years, people were conquering, people were being reconquered, they were conquering somewhere else, they got kicked the fuck out. And that was kind of the norm. It was kind of like a constant variation in who was governing you, who you were governing. And after 1950, and some friends of mine in Berlin went a little bit hard after a bender at a beer hall. They decided to take it a bit far, and what happened was everything after that has been about maintaining the status quo. You get the EU to maintain the status quo. You get the United Nations to maintain the status quo. You get the World Trade Organization to maintain the status quo. You get the World Health Organization to maintain the status quo. And like for men, that's not good, because if everything's static, that means you're stuck in the same position you were born in. You can't grow beyond that. But for women, being static is awesome, because then you're stuck at whatever level you manage to crawl your ass up to.
Because it becomes more about security. It becomes about the long-term security side of hypergamy is what it becomes. That's when we look at it this way, like guys will, I'm sure it'll end up in the comments at some point. It's like, oh, well, what about alpha fucks and beta bucks? Well, the beta buck side of this is where we go societally right now. Whatever provides long-term security, whatever's safe, whatever's comfortable, whatever, express yourself, express your feelings, all that kind of stuff. Also, Carl, I would argue this, is that it's not 1950. I think it goes all the way back to the advent of courtly love. Because when you look at what happened during the time of courtly love, when that sort of worked its way into chivalry, what we think of as romanticized chivalry, it was sort of like feminism 1.0. Like, guys, you need to think about our feelings more and be more sensitive and identify with the feminine, because the more you identify, the more the girls are like you. And so it becomes about prioritizing the female experience above the male experience. At the time that courtly love was sort of introduced into like Western societies, it was, I mean, right then and there, it was definitely a patriarchy. It was definitely exactly what you're saying before. It was very brutal. It was very it was male oriented governance. And once we got to the point where we could enjoy the benefits of like a rich, affluent society, that's when we start prioritizing women's experience above men's experience. So when you look at Harry Styles and we go, well, he's wearing a dress and he's got 1 million, likes on this thing. That's because we're prioritizing a female experience. What does it mean to be a man anymore? And we make it subjective, and it's really what it is it's to disqualify, and it is to delegitimize any sense of masculinity. It's to dehumanize. Like, if you're a man, you are less than human. That's why they call it toxic masculinity. So, and now it's any masculinity is toxic. So when we see a guy who behaves more like a female, when we see a guy who is dancing around in a tutu with his son to, let it go and Frozen and all this stuff, we only celebrate masculinity when it is a guy who is acting more feminine, because we want to redefine masculinity as that. We want to make masculinity sort of this act or this mask that men put on, right? That's not the real you. The real you would be more like a woman. Yeah. So take off that mask, Mr. John Fitch. You should stop fighting now, because
I don't even understand the idea of changing the definition of the word masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put a pin in this for a sec. Rich has got to go, and Carl's got a final question for him, and I want to hear more about how awesome his new book is.
Yeah, okay, so I had a question here, because something struck me when Rollo was talking there, is that when you're invading countries, you're conquering. What you're doing is value creation. You're taking someone else's value and adding it to your own.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have all that value, then it becomes about value distribution. Who gets what of the spoils that we've taken? And my gut feeling here is that value creation is an inherently male trait, and value redistribution is an inherently feminine way of thinking.
I agree. Yeah. Totally agree. Did you have a question for me too, Carl, or was it just that?
That was the question. I wanted your take on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Men by a wide margin. I did a broadcast with Conk on my channel maybe about a year ago, and he had a lot of data on it. And men by a wide margin overproduce more than they consume, and women by a wide margin overconsume more than they produce. I don't think that women actually produce much until after the age of about close to menopause, if I'm not mistaken. And it's usually because they end up, caring for others, or caring for children or grandchildren and stuff like that. But yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, hey, Rich, I guess you got to take off here. Let's talk about your book until we lose you.
Yeah, I got to run. There's nothing really too long to talk about, but just grab a copy, guys. It's on Amazon throughout all of their available platforms. I'll post in the chat again. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it on print. There are regions where it's not available right now. I'm working to add some kind of print to order option to my website in the next month, and Audible will be hopefully by next year. So yeah, just grab a copy. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Cool.
All right, have fun. Anyways, yeah, John and Rollo, we cut you guys off there. Where did we leave off?
I was just talking about how I it's my opinion anyway, is that we're at I agree 100% with Carl. I've said this before, is that when we look at how women redistribute resources, it's usually from a position of idealized egalitarianism. So I've seen these, I've read these, I gotta dig these up at some point, but I read this research experiments where they give resources like money or whatever to a group of women and to a group of guys. When guys redistribute, they go by merit. Like, John, you did a better job than Ryan, and Troy, you did a better job than him. And so they give you, you get $10, you get $5, you get $1, for as your addition to the collective kind of thing. That's where capitalism, ideally, I'm not saying it works this way all the time. It doesn't. Okay. But in a perfect world, in a utopian ideal society, that's how it ought to work. With women, you give them X amount of dollars and they'll go, one for you, one for you, one for you. Oh, Jenny's pregnant, 2 for you. One for you, one for you, one for you.
Except for Poon, they're real selfish with that.
Yeah, that's when you talk about there's still going to be intersexual competition. an intra-sexual competition. So that sort of upsets the egalitarian collective there. But women are far, far more communitarian than men will ever be. There's dozens of studies about this. So when we look at that, what's motivating them, and what is like Carl was saying, what's the means of control? I'm Rich is gone, but in that book Alpha God, there's a mention there about how Catholic conquistadors who will go over to the New World, right, into South America. What they would do is the first thing they would do is emasculate the men of those tribes so that they could conquer those tribes. They would make them they would either kill them outright, or they would literally sometimes cut off their dicks. Or they would go there and they would say, you're going to be more like a woman, or make them wear women's clothing, so that the only masculine men that the tribeswomen would mate with were the Spaniards or the French or whoever came over there to colonize that particular area. And the women, they're going to react according to hypergamy. Right, just like the
one pussy for you, one pussy for you.
Just like the Vichy French and the Vichy Dutch women wanted to bang Nazi officers back when they thought that the Nazis were going to win the war. So they would go and they were good time girls, or they would have illegitimate pregnancies with Nazi officers because they thought that they were going to be the conquering tribe that came in there. And so it's the same dynamic. It's just that we throw ethics and morals and religion and all this stuff. It's still the same machinery. We're just painting it in a different color.
Well, here, I'm gonna pass this one
to
off
be
to
fair,
Paul.
though, like at least the Nazi officers had Hugo Boss uniforms and Porsche-made cars. They were clearly high status.
Well,
They look cool.
Paul, here's my question to you. So we're talking about the conquistadors. You remember, like, when the Vietnam vets used to have like Viet Cong ears and they'd make a necklace? There was that trope. Imagine conquistadors with like a necklace of dicks.
Oh yeah.
And you're our resident army dude, so I'm curious about your thoughts.
Well, I've always wanted a dick necklace, but they wouldn't let us get it through customs. So,
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Are you caught up on this yet, or do you want me to give you like a quick little primer before I unleash you
I'm
on the
a
hounds?
little bit caught up. I mean, you can prime it. That's
Yeah, well, we started off like, are men more emotional than women? Why do people want guys emotional? Which, because guys are consumers when they're emotional, so they spend and they buy things. And then what's detrimental about it? Rich and Carl were talking about the business side of things.
Right.
John was talking about how being an emotional bitch is the easiest way to get punched in the neck.
Yeah.
Troy is showing good examples of that. And then we kind of trailed off for a bit, but now we're back onto like business, emotions, and like the conquistadors was the last bit here.
In dick necklaces. Right.
Yes, dick necklaces.
Well, I think I do think that like this is a big, gigantic shit test. Like the way that society is going and the West is going. It's almost like feminism is a gigantic shit test to see who the real men are, kind of thing. It's women are designed to want to sort of test men and see who's going to be on the top, who's the most mateable, right? And it's almost like as they got more rights and responsibilities in society and had more of an influencer say, rather than passive influence, more of an active influence, it became like, well, let's just keep imposing these ideas to make men more feminine. And whoever doesn't go along with that, that's the more masculine, mateable people. And then the rest are, not. And the ones that are not are, strategic pluralism are those guys that they'll use for resources. Those guys that'll be the workhorse slaves. It's happening it's almost like we're playing out this evolutionary drive on a massive level. That's what I kind of almost see it. And it's actually killing the West and it's killing society. I mean, I hate to be somebody who
join it. You'll love it. Decline, man.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're definitely on a decline for sure. And I was willing to accept that really more than I ever had been able to with this last election in the United States. It's not about who wins it. It's the way the arguments have gone and the way people are voting, the reasons why people are making these decisions.
What were the platforms? What were the platforms over the last election? Can you name one from either side?
Yeah.
Like, what did they say? I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. One guy hid in a basement and said, I'm not that guy. And then
The other guy said, "I'm that guy."
I'm that guy, and then that's it. Like, what was the election about? It's just comical.
I don't think you guys get to shit on Trudeau anymore. I really don't.
No, I do think that's a very valid thing though to bring up.
At this point.
Because I kind of want to bring this up though.
I don't know,
because it's one of those things I've noticed with like modern society versus the old society. Because if you were the big hunter dude in your tribe, you'd be coming into the campfire with like a huge buffalo on your shoulder. Let's say theoretically. But in current society, you can walk up there with like half a McDonald's cheeseburger in your hand, be like, yeah, I fed everybody, man. Look at what I did. This is what I managed to accomplish. And like all these idiots will buy into this shit. And I think that's part of emotionalism too, is that no one's asking, well, let's see the actual real numbers behind it. Because you can go with GDP, and I love GDP for the reason, like, you could spend $1 million paying some dude to paint your dick every day, 365 days a year, and it will increase the GDP.
Plan on doing that when I
did
make
he
it big.
actually create any fucking value?
I don't know. I have a nice shiny dick lace now.
I mean,
it all comes down to
how valuable
persuasion,
is this
right? Because
we gotta stop making these dick jokes. The haters are gonna they're just gonna take
Here it comes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look at these dudes dick painting. You see?
There we go. Oh, good. You're back, Rollo. Here, Tim. Fucking hold your nuts, man. Rollo was gone. Why would I address your super chat to him when he's not fucking here, dude? Here's the thing. Distribution in resources in a communitarian sense, as women do, is good for men if they also get the lion's share of sex as a reward. Yeah, if the world was fair,
I forget.
would be great.
Was it who was somebody told me? Oh, it was Colty Bra. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Colt. Yeah, he actually lives pretty close by. I'm trying to get an interview with him, Colt, if you're watching. But he made this comparison to guys who are sort of like there's the hunters and there's the gatherers, and there are men who are also the beta male gatherers. I mean, if you go and you look at like primate societies, they do the same thing. There's the females give access to alpha males when they're in estrus, when they are ovulating, so that they can have that alpha male's children. But it's not that they won't give sexual access to the betas when they're in their down cycle, as long as the beta can bring them a banana or pick fleas off of them,
or babysit,
or provide care.
Give up sex for babysitting.
So is it sex? Okay, so in an evolutionary perspective, Tim, is it the sex you're having, or is it like the sex with the product of that sex that actually matters in the long term? So yeah, you can have sexual access and feel good about yourself. You can do that. We do that right now. Guys do that all day long. They jerk off to porn, high quality, 4K streaming, free, ubiquitous porn. Do it all day long. Why go through the communitarian?
Right.
Because let's be serious. Like I know dudes who are sitting there jerking off to their own fucking Twitter feeds all day. They don't even need the goddamn porn.
Yeah.
I jerk off to Ryan's
berry pickers, like those guys, the beta males who are like, I'm using this from now. Sorry, Colty, I'm stealing this from you. From now on, it's no longer simps. You're berry pickers. That's what you are, because you're back at the tribe with all the women folk trying to identify more like a woman and try
grain
to be
eaters and berry pickers.
Berry pickers.
Yeah. Hey, Troy, whose hair's sticking up more, yours or mine right now?
Mine. I just went and did a bit of a respray.
Is it a competition?
I know.
Oh, Johnny's in for the title again.
I'll be honest, like all of you guys.
It's like male peak. It's male peacock display.
Definitely. Go hit the streets.
I'm gonna repeat what I told Ryan on his show earlier today. All of you look like you're unlockable characters in some knockoff version of Tekken.
All right, Sammy. Thank you, man. Chinese women in World War II appreciated the Japanese officers. The Chinese men are still mad about that in 2020. Is that what all that beef is about? I thought that was the Nanking thing.
Probably.
Like, I remember the French actually had a thing where there was so many French chicks, fucking German dudes, they actually were worried about the purity of the French race, and they had like a tribunal for it. I can't remember how it ended up because I didn't really care about French.
Human beings have been very involved in eugenics for way long before the Nazis came around. Right now, the fact that we have pretty much handed over the reproductive future of the human race to just one sex of the human race, that's eugenics right there as well.
Ad hoc eugenics program run by Karen, thank God.
Yeah, well, even addressing that question though, the thing is, it's not just access to sex that we want, because like Rollo said, we have access. There's never been more free access to sex, for everybody, right? It's genuine desire. The thing that we really drive towards and want as men is that desire, where she has genuine desire from us. Because if she has genuine desire from us, then she's wanting to get pregnant with us. She's wanting to have our offspring. So, selfish gene theory, we want our genes to propagate. That requires, or in theory would require, genuine desire from the woman. So she's not just exchanging sex for a banana, but actually having sex with us when she
wants to. Yeah.
Right,
High
exactly.
potassium,
It's the
motherfucker.
difference between having babies and having your babies. Yeah. I want to have his babies. I wanted to also throw this out there too, because I feel like we would not be complete if we didn't ask this question. It's like, we're talking about like who is manipulating men emotionally. And I think that because we have the last 3 generations of guys who have been raised as emotional retards in a female correct society that says, express yourself and be more, to be a more perfected human, to be even human is to be more female, is to act more female. It is to identify more with the feminine, because masculinity is toxic and it's dehumanizing you if you are more male. What happens though is that now that we have these generations of guys who have become more feminized, they are much more easier to manipulate, because their trained response, their conditioned response, their blue pill conditioned response is to default to the emotional. That's why you get black pill guys. That's why you get these guys.
It's an emotional reaction.
It's easier to persuade people that are emotional
element.
rational.
Yeah, because when you're emotional, it's easier. You're, like Carl said, you're a better customer, but you're also easier to provoke, because that's your default response. Rather than going, whoa, wait a minute, let's look at let's exercise our critical thinking skills.
And that's why critical thinking is nowhere right now.
Yeah, no, it's
Well, how many guys have lost their
put
career
my
from that?
hat on now?
There's a lot of money in that now too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to steal Rollo's hat and become Carl Adamus here. Because someone just tweeted at me here that Belle Delphine is putting out her first hardcore porn on her OnlyFans on Christmas Day.
Who is?
Oh,
Merry Christmas.
Bathwater girl.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Something to look forward to.
Yeah. So here's what I'm suspecting. I'm expecting about 1/3 of my Twitter feed to completely spurg out about this, the trads. I'm expecting 1/3 of my Twitter feed, the red pill men, to go nuts at how are you guys simping at this hoe putting out porn. And I'm expecting 1/3 of my Twitter feed to be completely quiet for the next 2 days while jerking off.
Well, we haven't had a good porn scare for a while, have we? So we must be due one by now. Can we fit one in? Can we fit one in before Christmas?
Yeah,
can we get
big sex tape?
Can we get Alexander Cortez to start banging on about it for a bit?
Oh, for the love of fuck.
You guys have heard? I'm sure you guys. And we're at the end of the show here, so I'm going to say it. Have you guys have heard of a hate fuck before? Right, like where you're just like, it's just angry sort of. Sometimes
Dude, I brought the
I
term
call that my
Jasper in
normal
2010s.
right. So I would introduce, there's a hate wank right now, to use UK parlance. There is like when this kind of stuff happens, like when their OnlyFans girl or Belle Delphine decides to go and like get laid by somebody else on camera, then they're like, I hate this girl.
Well, isn't that why a lot of the porn out there is just like black dudes railing white chicks?
Yes.
And
it turns out black
I
guys
did
aren't
2
actually into
videos
that.
on cucking. It's on my channel. You guys can check that out. It's
I
pretty
wish
nice.
Sterling was still on. I'd like to have him. Actually, I'm going to go on live with Sterling on Monday. So,
All right, well, here's
Nice.
the last question for you guys. Since everybody here, for the most part, is a brand, how many brands have you noticed? Like, professors, guys online, basically get baited into an emotional reaction. Then when they have an emotional reaction, they use that to weaponize and fucking remove the guy from the internet.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what's works now.
I mean,
right?
anytime you make a comment on something that doesn't affect your life on the internet is an emotional outburst.
Yeah.
Yeah, like who was the first one? That professor that said,
Like,
"Women
oh, I
cry in the
gotta
Tim
say
Hunt, I
something
think, wasn't
about
it?"
this right now.
Yeah.
No, well,
So
I would say you guys, of course, remember the interview of Jordan Peterson, and I can't remember the name of the interview of the girl who was trying
The
to get him with
GQ
all.
one or the Kathy
Yeah.
I mean,
Newman one?
Kathy, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one right there. That's what made Jordan Peterson. She was trying to provoke what she thought was there, right?
Yeah.
Because she was probably used to getting those questions and getting under guys' skins because she's so used to guys being emotional and easy to sort of provoke. He wasn't, because he's like a freaking robot when it comes to that kind of stuff. But like, he also turned it around on her and made her, that's like, people who didn't know who Jordan Peterson was, they sure as shit knew who he was after that, because she was just like speechless, and he's like, ha, gotcha.
And all he did was not lose his shit on camera. Like, how
Sometimes
rare
that's all it is, though. That's all it takes sometimes, is not lose your shit and you
Yeah.
win.
Yeah, and
You know?
now in retrospect, we know exactly what that takes. A very massive amount of benzodiazepines in your system before you enter the interview room.
That's alpha.
That is
fucking
true as
sad.
well.
Benzos are alpha.
You're ready to go. There's other ways to provoke guys. Okay, so that's one way. That's usually like, when we see that, we go, okay, this is a shit test. Like, from a red pill lens perspective, we go, okay, I can see what she's trying to do, because we've been studying this shit for decades now. But like, if you look at things like, say, Tony Robbins. When Tony Robbins gets into a room, he's already got guys who are amping up. Like, they're doing the pre-show, right? They have it's like the opening band for like Kiss or Aerosmith or whatever. Like, I got the guy who's there to sort of amp up the crowd so that they're already in a frenzy and a lather before Tony Robbins walks on stage. That's another way that I think that emotions of men who have been sort of conditioned to be more like emotional. That's how there are emotions that men are more primed for, I think, than women are. Like, men don't necessarily default to crying. That's why we say it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry, because men don't default to crying. They usually default to excitement or violence or anger or like outrage, like indignation. Now, I think more than ever in this feminized, like we say, all these guys are manginas or they've been pussified. Like, in the pussified generation, if you're teaching men to be more like women, they're going to get off more on indignation, and that's how you get. That's how guys are making small fortunes online, on YouTube, talking shit about other people. It's basically The View for guys. It's indignation for guys.
Yeah. Indignation is a massive one, isn't it? And that's what all the media uses, isn't it? It's all rage bait. It's all rage clickbait. And this is what actually a lot of detractors of this show will use. It's all rage clickbait. It's all like, look at these, look. And it doesn't matter if the narrative makes sense or if it's untrue or if it's, just stuff that's been fabricated or sort of
sex model of content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't matter because like all the audience wants is to feel angry.
If you appeal to that emotion, then you're gonna get more clicks. When I just noticed that, like, I'm pretty new in my channel and just been building up whatever I'm doing here to provide information for guys, and I notice when I have something that is like kind of I don't say talk shit about women, but it's kind of negative, right? Like it's unflattering.
Blows the fuck up, doesn't it?
And oh man, like couple thousand views, right? But then if it's guys will ask for, well, how do we know she's capable of pair bonding or whatever? And I put out like, okay, well, here's some green flags, like some things you can look for that are good qualities that you look for if she's LTR material. Nah, like a fraction.
Boring.
Boring. Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants.
No, I think people actually enjoy feeling enraged, because it's like, is it? I mean, I assume it just hits on.
Feels
dopamine.
like you're doing something.
Well, I assume it hits on dopamine, right? But it takes you away from from being yourself. It takes you away from sitting as yourself and going, "This is my life. It's a bit crap. What should I do to improve myself?" If you feel really angry about something, then that takes that emotion away, even momentarily. And we see this with politics. We see this with the election. Biden, people on both sides really, really angry. They spend their whole day arguing about it on Twitter, and it's because of the emotional hit that they get, because it stops the racing head for just a moment. It gives them a sense of peace and a sense of like, oh, I'm okay.
Well, that's why I was thinking, you're talking earlier about the safety, and now women want to share everything equally. It doesn't matter if you have means or not. Meanwhile, depression is going up. People are bored, and now that people are bored, they're inventing dumb shit to get enraged about. Let's just nuke a guy's career because he said girls cry. Like, that's the kind of thing people do for funsies now, is ruin livelihoods.
Well, the thing is, like, every guy here is in an LTR, is somewhat of an LTR, right?
Somewhat.
Yeah, for the most part, I think.
Johnny just got out of his.
Okay, like, let's be fair, though. Every
bachelor.
guy's been, well, everyone who's been in an LTR with a chick sees what kind of shit they watch. It's The View, it's The Real Housewives,
Sex
it's
and the
anything.
City.
It's Vanderpump Rule, anything that will get their emotions flowing about
BBC
chicks,
porn,
trash talking. I'm
Man, we had a big Gossip Girl weekend last weekend, man. That shit is just.
Yeah, and I'm coming around to a point here, and it's just that I'm seeing the same thing with guys because they're making those shows for guys. And what is the current election if not The Real Housewives of the Rose Garden? That's essentially trying to appeal to that same male side. So, but instead of, the girls crying and, that girl is such a bitch, it's the guy going like, fuck that dude, he's lying. I'm going to show up with my AR-15 on Main Street and start having a protest. And it's not like a comment on the election in general. It's just like the entire thing. They're taking things men care about, politics, power, property, finance, and they're kind of Real Housewifing them.
Well,
WWE wrestling. Think about that for a second. My wheelhouse. No, I'm just kidding. But think about that for a second. How it used to be, right? And there was still that drama that they would play out. But have you ever watched it more recently? It's all drama.
Really?
Like,
Really?
You're going to ask us that?
Right. It's all drama now, compared to like back when, like, I don't know, like Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant days. It was, I feel like it was a lot less drama back then, a lot more beating each other up. And now it's like so much more.
It's always been drama
and emoting.
It's all been played out already. And now they're like, they have to take it another step higher. And it's like jumping the shark.
Yeah,
I think that's like what
it's.
I
have a tenant that's David, man. He's really into pro wrestling, and he's like, pro wrestling right now is awful, just because they've like done everything.
They need
and then there's no audience around either, so it's like they can't work with the crowd, so it's like really flat.
Yeah.
I think that's what Conor McGregor brought to MMA, though. He brought that wrestling vibe to MMA.
Yeah, he figured it out before a lot of people that I was saying it was pro wrestling for a while, and then Chael Sonnen is the first guy to really embrace it and run with it. You're talking about a guy who's barely top 20, maybe never top 20, and talked himself into two title fights with Anderson Silva, one of the pound for pound greatest ever. Right. And he fought him in Brazil, and he's like making fun of the Brazilian people. They wanted to kill the guy.
Remember that boxer, the Prince, who used to do that kind of shit for boxing?
The whole Colby Covington thing is just him biting off of Chael and doubling down on it and going even a step further.
And you don't even have to win. How much did McGregor make for losing that fight? More than I'll ever make.
Yeah, not as much as UFC made.
Whenever I make a comment, I can be as measured. It doesn't matter what I can be a constructive criticism about MGTOW, and I realize, yes, there are different grades of MGTOW. Thank you very much. But if I say anything where I just even like ask the wrong question, one of the most common responses I get from guys is, "You're resorting to shaming. You're resorting to shaming tactics. That's what women do. Shame, shame, shame." I'm like, well,
yeah, women complain about that too. So
you're the one, like you were saying before, that guy, Ryan, the guy who was at the Canadian barbecue guy, the guy where shame, shame, shame. The reason why guys
shaming
is because that's a female reaction. Is because I love it too, because women will say, well, shame doesn't work, but they're the first ones to use it. They're the first ones to
it doesn't work on chicks because they have no shame. Like, I get that. You can't take a bukkake in the face on video and then talk about how you have a shame response.
Yeah,
like, come on.
But respect me.
That is trying to provoke you to an emotion. If somebody says shame on you, you should feel ashamed. Oh, I feel ashamed, right? I feel like I'm guilty or something like that. It's like, no, I don't. Like, you know what? I am using masculine primary reason and rationality to point out flaws in the way that you're thinking, but you're going to go, you're using shaming tactics. That's what a bitch would do. Yeah. And you would know because
that's what you do.
in a condition to be a bitch and respond like a bitch and to see what a bitch would do in the first place. So it's like when I hear that anyways, it's like I'm thinking this guy is a properly conditioned guy. Like let's have a debate. Let's have an honest conversation about what I'm talking about here rather than defaulting to an emotional appeal. That's what happens. You always appeal to, like, I've got at least 2 essays on this where it's like appealing to reason. Never appeal to women's reason because women prioritize emotion before they do reason. Appeal to emotion and then you get to reason, assuming she's somebody who can learn and has learned reason, but her default response is always going to be emotional. Same applies to guys who have been conditioned to make their first response their emotional response and then think logically about something.
That's a great question there.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm going to dick ride Chesty here because I think he got the main answer, but you guys feel free to chime in on it.
What's it saying?
I can't.
What was the
address to Roll? Let him go first.
What was the
girls
old
asking
one?
what her mental point of origin should be.
My moral sense is in my ovaries. Wasn't that some actress?
My moral compass is in my vagina. That was who's the girl who made the pussy scented candle? Was that
Gwyneth Paltrow?
Yeah, I think that quote's from her, but I use that as the thing. What's she saying here? Sorry if this is a stupid question. What do you think a woman's mental point of origin should be? I'll tell you what it is by default. It's solipsism. It is herself.
Yes.
It is always
exactly.
That is an evolutionary reality. Women had to be their own mental point. In fact, to this day, we still teach a girl. We don't stop women from solipsism today because solipsism is the natural state for women. I'm not saying that an opportunism because that's a survival adaptation. They had to be because women are the more vulnerable sex. If they choose the wrong guy, if they make bad reproductive choices, it could have been a death sentence. Still could be a death sentence to women because they made a bad choice. So they have to be self-concerned. They have to be self-centered. They have to be child-centered as well to make sure that the offspring is going to be protected as well. So a woman's mental point of origin is by default herself. It's getting her to think about other people and to be like, that's where the socialization comes in. And that's where you get communitarianism.
Yeah, I chime in on that one, but that's exactly. So men, we're having to tell men constantly to get on their mental point of origins because we have both alpha or beta traits or capabilities, right? But men will default to self-sacrifice a lot of times. Men will default to starting to put other things, other people, other stuff in front of what they need to do to take care of themselves. And then they turn around and they find themselves in some sort of beta male slavery of a marriage, in a job they don't like just miserable because they are defaulting to what they think everybody else thinks they should do and what they think they'll make them happy is sacrificing pieces of themselves for everybody else. I mean, this is even military service is kind of based in that. Take guys with very alpha traits and behaviors. They're like, cool, I'll go sacrifice my life for country, women, children, whatever, and they're willing to go do that. Women
aspect of male as an aspect of conventional masculinity.
Right.
It's always been duty, honor are those are male concepts. Women like to take them and modify them to work in their best interests. But that sort of the idea of honor, the idea of duty is really a cooperative effort between men. Because if you're out there and you're putting your life on the line and everyone expects you to that's the to be a man is to sacrifice. Simple as that. And to take
that's why women are more, men are more wired to suicide. That's why the reason why the suicide rates are higher for men. We're actually internally wired for that. If we think we're a drain on resources, we're willing to sacrifice ourselves, even if that means taking ourselves out of the gene pool due to self-selection. Women aren't as wired for that. So
no, they'll take you all fucking down with them.
Exactly.
I want to ask.
Well, here, Rolo, 1 sec. I got $100 super chat from Great Red Strike. I do want to give him some shout out here. Great show, guys. Just proving I'm not always being critical. I didn't think you were, man. I thought you were probably the most awesomest guy in the chat right now. And I'm saying
Hey,
that
dude.
with no bias.
Hey,
And
let's
I
be
look
honest
at
though,
that.
Ryan. Like, if we call guys always critical and we get $100 super chats, we need to start giving them, calling every guy in the chat is only here and is only being critical all the time. I can't believe we put this shit on for you for free. It's all we get is criticism.
It's true. They're all
Actually,
just
I wanna follow-
criticizing.
You guys, here's a great business piece of advice. Follow the Rolo model.
No response. Thank you for the $100.
Have the Rolo model. Say no to show up on somebody's channel, and then they'll throw you $100 super chat to talk to you. It's like great.
let me just ask, I want to ask John something real quick, because this was something I just have kind of recently thought about and was brought up in my Twitter feed. It's like guys will ask me, like, do you think that guys are naturally alpha or naturally beta? Is there like a biological component? Are some guys more predisposed? There's a really great documentary, and it has like Henry Rollins is the host of it. It's called The Warrior Gene. And there's supposed to be some sort of genetic component to guys who have a more natural propensity towards violence, as opposed to like guys who are like sort of go along to get along kind of guys. And what brought this up was like somebody sent me a video of this kid who was just like, I think the boy was like about, couldn't have been more than like 5 years old, but he's like ignoring some girl. Like everybody's saying he's alpha because he's like playing guitar and says, I don't love you, but you can hang out kind of thing. Like people are saying, well, are boys naturally alpha? Are they born that way alpha, and we crush that alphaness out of them? I'm of the opinion that, we systematically condition our young men as if they're defective girls. But do you think that there's a biological sort of an evolved genetic component?
Some people are definite naturally born more alpha, more just on their own. They don't need, when I was a kid, I used to just go outside and play in the woods by myself all day. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I didn't need anybody else to like have fun. I see it in my youngest son. He can sit and play by himself, completely content, doesn't need other people around, but then at the same time can be around a group of kids and can be leading them. They want to be hanging out with him.
He sounds well adjusted.
But he's ready, and he's ready to fight at the drop of a hat.
He needs to get in touch with his feelings. He can't do that.
The older one.
Maybe his feelings are he wants to kick some ass.
The older one is similar, but like he holds back a little bit, and I feel like if I'm not careful, he could get brainwashed into being blue pilled.
Mm-hmm.
I think the youngest one, he's steadfast into just like, fuck it, I'm not listening anyways. So I don't think I have to worry about him getting brainwashed. But the older one may be influenced, so I just have to keep letting him, it's okay to be powerful, kind of thing.
Here's my theory, and this is what I think is going on right now. Is we say this constantly, like we raise our boys as if they're defective girls. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they turn into defective girls is because of their natural proclivities, their innate mental firmware as male human beings is being overwritten. That firmware is being overwritten by software that is feminine primary software. So
if the kids aren't rough and tumbling, if they're not roughhousing at a young age, I think developmentally creates problems.
Right. And so what happens is like men naturally process emotions differently than women do, and particularly negative emotions. They process it differently. So there's a male way of sort of sorting out your feelings, and there's a female way of sorting out your feelings. But when men are like, quote unquote, emotionally unavailable, we blame that on social constructionism. We blame that on, John Fitch taught his boys, like he smacked them upside the head and told them don't cry and that kind of stuff. Like we still think in terms of like male chauvinist, like drill sergeant / football coach who, winning's the only thing. It's not it's the only thing. Do it. And so we think in those like kind of really cliched, stupid, like 1950s terms still here in 2020. But what happens is, because and Paul talked about this, like men commit suicide more than women do. Like they are successful at it, they zero themselves out, and they end up killing themselves as a result of that. So what's a female society solution? Well, we need to talk to them more, and they need to reach out, and if you're having
catastrophic failure,
and now they're shooting up schools instead. Like, good job, guys.
I'm not saying that men don't have emotions. They do. but they process emotions differently. And when they do, it doesn't look like it should in a female correct society. And so to correct that, we use more feminism and more gynocentrism to try to turn them, because we think that that's going to be the correct way to do it. And it is absolutely the opposite of what we should be doing, because we need to teach men to control their emotions that much more, because the emotions they have can be dangerous. They can be, let's go shoot up the school, if my dad, John Fitch, isn't there to tell me to channel that into creative.
Don't shoot up a school, son.
Learn here, put on these boxing gloves, let's go hit right, that kind of stuff. And so what we dealt with in female primary society, we don't know how men process emotions, because we think everybody's equal. They're all blank slates. It's social constructionism. No, it's not. The longer you think that, the more dangerous society becomes, because those kids are going to be the next Nicholas Cruz. Sorry, go ahead.
That's why, the DoD, Department of Defense, solution for suicide is a catastrophic failure. They've been pushing suicide awareness, and we are forced to have briefs every 6 months on how to not kill yourself. And it's all basically telling men to emote. And it's a catastrophic failure. It's falling into a feminine imperative and handling men like women, and then expecting that to work. The reason you want a guy to not kill himself, he needs to feel valuable. He needs to feel as if he is producing or providing, as a sense of purpose. Guys were wired to provide value to the tribe. So emoting, you know what I mean? And women provided value by being a part of the social circle and structure within the tribe. They were utilizing resources, and the way that they could maneuver around socially would increase or decrease a woman's value. A guy could be a total a-hole and but be the best hunter or the best protector, and people valued him in that society. So, emoting is not in maneuvering socially isn't going to necessarily help a guy not want to kill himself. Having a sense of purpose and value is. And instead of focusing,
weird, the military failing on that front.
But isn't it everyone's own responsibility?
Yeah, I know, right?
But it's everyone's own responsibility to develop that sense of purpose, right? Should be beholden upon all of us to do, all guys to do. So
it should be, but without
Paul's
guidance,
point is that the military is trying to take it on as a responsibility. So stop fucking it up. I think if I read it right.
Well,
it's the most interesting thing here is I was kind of looking into what kind of books do guys read for self-help, and it's all like, how do I become a better soldier for my tribe? How do I improve these things about myself? You know what the best-selling female self-help coach is?
50 Shades of
Brené Brown. It's essentially a lecturer who tells girls that you have to give up on your shame and guilt. And that's why girls don't have shame when they're in a bukkake party, because they're told that you should never feel shame ever. If you're gangbanged in front of your dad by your third cousins at Thanksgiving,
it's empowering.
You shouldn't feel shame even though you're breaking the COVID-19 restrictions. You do you.
You should feel shame about that.
Yeah, that's a bridge too far.
Bukkake's all right, but if we're talking about getting within 2 meters, then that's a
if they stand 6 feet away and they wear masks, that's fine.
Well, they'll wear a mask. They
will. A zipper mask.
All right, Rolo. I don't know how long we got you for here. I know you got to take off for a bit, and then I was going to have just the rest of the guys here end off the hour. We got 20 more minutes. The only other point I wanted to put was just a list of the common grifters that grift a man emotionally. Like marketing is obviously one. Tony Robbins. Yeah.
RSD. Everyone on RSD has RSD before his name. That's what you're looking at.
Anyone right now with a Get Your Ex Back program for $99 or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone who's been tweeting with a Trump hat on for the last 4 years.
Who showers with their Trump hat on? Yes.
Yeah, shower. Yeah, if you shower with the hat on, that's
is that true?
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna bug out. I will be on my show tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what I'm going to talk. John, I really want to get you on my show. I just want to have a chat with you sometime. So we'll work that out on something. Yeah. And then book 4, I'm waiting for the galley proof to come back. So very soon, within a week or so. So that's when you can expect the book. So. All right, guys. I will see you later.
Hear about that.
All right, later,
by the
dude.
way.
There.
So here,
Can't wait till
guys,
it comes out.
see, let's like carry on with this one. I am curious, like,
Yeah.
who's the emotional grifters right now? Like, I know you guys were already talking about some of the Sphere brands.
The Democrats.
Pastors. Do you think Democrats
Democrats.
or do you think conservatives do as well, though?
They can't-
Yeah, in a
'cause you gotta
different
admit-
way. In a different
Yeah,
way.
like
Yeah, there's a grift on each
efficacy
side.
or the legality of it aside, you got to admit
You
the
know,
conservative
there's
side's really
definitely-
riled up right now.
Well, I think the conservative grift is actually a good money making grift. Do you know what I mean? And I think it will continue. I think it'll particularly continue, assuming that Trump doesn't overturn this and Biden gets inaugurated. I think there's going to be a massive market for people basically with the Trump was robbed sort of
Patriot.
message. Exactly that. Well, exactly all of that
Patriot
Patriot
market.
stuff. And I think
Yeah.
I think if anybody's watching this and you want to start a personal brand, get on that market because it's going to be you get your Patreon set up. You know you're going to make a load of cash because there's
I'm
a
actually
lot
surprised you don't,
of
John.
thereage clicking out there. For
Not
that stuff.
rage.
Well,
Like,
that's
honestly,
what it turns
John
into.
Paul, you guys would be a
all my-
perfect fit for it. Ex-military, a fighter with a beard. Like,
Yeah.
just like pull a Hodge,
Awesome
put
beard,
on
by
an
the way.
American flag hat, and just sit there and read the news. Like, I'm not even joking. You guys would probably blow the fuck up.
Probably.
Yeah, do you guys have parlor accounts and own Oakleys?
I have.
I have a
don't
parlor
even-
account. I do.
I'm learning how to
I don't
work
know
the
how to
internet
use it. I
still,
can't
so,
figure it
yeah,
out.
I don't know what's going
No,
on.
but like I remember I told all my liberal friends in 2016, sorry, Trump outplayed you at your own game, deal with it. And I've been telling all my conservative friends in 2020 is that, sorry guys, Biden outplayed you at your own game, deal with it. It's just like Trump
It's
hit all those same, like if you look at Obama's election and you see abstractly which point did he hit? He hit the aspirational goal, he hit the hope, he did the there's something wrong in this country. Those are the exact same 3 points that Trump hit in 2016. Then you get 4 years of relative instability. And then you have like the Biden candidacy being like, hey, I've been here for 50 years and I've never been unstable a day in my life. So if you vote for me, at least the media can get back to writing about the stock market.
Yep. Well, we bomb people in the Middle East.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a guarantee there's a war coming in
Pretty
the next 4
cool.
years.
Yeah,
Oh,
Syria.
The
Syria,
Democrats
we're
love
gonna clean
bombing
it
the
up.
Middle East.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
be
but
in
let's be fair
Syria.
though, John. At least the Syrian people can have the pleasure of being the first country bombed by a half Asian, half black vice president.
Oh yeah.
Strong, independent.
Maybe
woman's
they
gonna
can
bomb
paint
them,
the
so.
bombs pink.
But you see what I mean? Like, put aside the efficacy or the legality or like if the election is good. Those aren't what people are talking about. They're talking about it on an emotional appeal. It's like, this is our boy. This is our champion. Get riled up. They're stealing it.
Jack
from
Murphy,
you.
what it is,
Jack
even the
Murphy made a
conservative.
really good comment the other day talking about for 4 years the media just stirred up like just anxiety in people.
Yeah.
Because every day they were
Oh.
reporting on some other disaster. So like for those people, they were so tired of anxiety every single day, they were going to vote the opposite way, just not to feel that.
Which is weird though. It's like a wife being so bitchy, and she's like, "I'll stop being bitchy if you just buy me a purse." And then America's response was to buy her two.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's
And
your
then
Louis
she just gets a
Vuitton,
bit
babe.
cheer.
Please leave me
And then we'll
alone.
go right
No,
back into the press not covering any of the crimes that they're doing or any of the bombs or it'll be like Obama again. There was no controversies under Obama. Oh, really?
Yeah, but
Well,
see the point, though?
Obama
Like,
got
it's-
a peace prize while he
He
was
did.
sending drones to Pakistan.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to argue.
Blowing
that-
up women
like-
and children.
yeah,
Mhm.
but that's
how
the
do-
point.
It
But I
is.
think it's just can
Go
we
ahead,
just
Sven.
get to a point, and this is like, sorry for being a dick, but can we just stop being partisan, period? Like, can the media stop being partisan and just cover the politicians accurately all the time? Would that
Well,
be
will
such a
anybody
hard
watch it?
fucking sell?
It
If
doesn't
everybody
sell,
would
though,
be their own
unfortunately.
center point of origin in the first place, if you're your own center point of origin, you're not lumping yourself in with a party.
Yep.
Well,
I'm not gonna lump myself in with a group and they get dragged down with the group. No, like if there's a certain element that they support at a certain time that benefits me personally, then okay. But like, guys, like these political parties, they don't really represent you. You got to go with what you need and what your family's going to get and what you're going to personally benefit from.
Dude,
Well,
that
I
sums
did-
up
I
the
did a
whole thing
tweet-
about being unemotional about it. That's awesome.
I did a tweet this week, which was basically something like, guys, how many guys in 2016 misread "Be Your Own Mental Point of Origin" for have Donald Trump as your mental point of origin? And I mean, listen, I mean, I know, Trump's massively popular with a lot of people in this space, and all the rest of it. And I totally get why. I get it. I completely get it. But come on, I mean, if you're wearing a red hat for 4 years, you're completely in some other dude's frame. Like, how is that? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just don't get it.
They're not getting it. These guys. So I mean, I had a conversation. I just actually did a video kind of covering some of this on my channel, because guys take their beta tendencies, we could call it, to just come up with a term for it, and they get hurt in the blue pilled world, right? And so then they find red pilled stuff, and okay, it's true, and there's cold hard truths there, and it's kind of pointing them in the right direction, but they take all that beta behavior and mindset, and then they just take it to the red pill, and then they don't apply the principles well at all. They're looking for someone to lead them because they can't lead themselves. So they're not understanding that the aspect of becoming more of a masculine alpha male. They're not doing that. They're not taking that step. They're just taking their same behavior and applying it to a different philosophy. And it's what I called safe world theory. If you guys ever heard anything about that, they have to have a set of rules or someone to follow or a set of ideas that they cling to so that they can navigate the world and feel safe, basically, to do
2.0, man.
Yep. And so, and then as soon as you violate that safe world theory, it's a visceral reaction, a lot of emoting or whatever. I had said some things that, if interpreted the wrong way, would violate the way these guys interpreted some red pill concepts. And some guys lost it and are emailing me and upset, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys are emoting, you're not thinking critically, you're not leading, you're not looking at these concepts in the right way. And so that's just kind of what they do. They, whether it's politically or anything else, they want a leader. It's just, they want somebody to tell them. They want that. We've talked about this before. They want that 12 rules for life, right? Guys want me to give them, because I talk about pair bonding a lot. They want me to give them like 12 rules for pair bonding. Like, what are the rules, or what's the list that I can follow so I can autistically She has this trait. She has that trait. She can pair bond. Oh, nope. She doesn't have number 5 and 6. So she's not capable of a relationship. Like, they want instead of just, they want certainty that doesn't exist. The only thing that you have is your abilities. I mean, the reason why me, you, Troy, we're not afraid of women. We don't get upset and angry about some of these concepts, because a woman can't hurt us. I can't get hurt by a woman, because other than maybe short
Maybe a
term.
fat one.
Okay, she could, yeah.
She falls on you.
She falls on me, I'm screwed, But I mean, like,
yeah, but to be honest, though, Paul looks like he could handle a good 500 pounds in a deadlift. He should be cool with that. As long as he's not over 500 pounds and he has his belt on, he's cool.
She's 550. I'm not wearing the belt. I'm in trouble. I can't lift her on the counter. Trust me. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, yeah, it's just, these guys are afraid. Why do these guys get angry? Why the red pill rage? Why all this stuff? Some of it's because they feel they've been duped and screwed over, but it's out of fear. It's out of fear. They're afraid because they're not skilled enough yet at vetting women, keeping toxic women out of their lives, and when they get a woman, handling that woman. And then if things go south in whatever relationship you're in, whether it's plate spinning or more than that, to get out of it. You know what I mean? Instead, they find themselves in these scenario with combined finances and kids and things that they didn't plan for, and then they're getting screwed over. They're getting hurt by women because their skills are not good with women. The only certainty you can have as a man is to increase your level of skill. Whatever it is, if your business, you're going to be an entrepreneur, how can you ensure that you're going to make enough money? There is no rules, set of rules you can follow. If I just follow these 8 steps, I'll be a millionaire. It doesn't work that way. But when
you're following Jordan Peterson, 12
well,
rules.
right, then 12 rules, then you're fine. You just start if you make your bed in the morning, right? But I mean, it's like these guys. They want that because they're afraid. They're not able to navigate the chaotic world. Being alpha and being masculine or whatever is having an ability to navigate that world, that chaotic world, and being comfortable with uncertainty. The more uncomfortable you are with uncertainty, the more successful your potential is in anything.
Yeah. Absolutely right. I think 100%. You need to be comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen next, and that's really hard. It's really, really hard because we all, to some degree, like a bit of certainty. We like a bit of security, but that's just not how the world is. Not anymore. Certainly not in 2020. I mean, Jesus, look at it.
Yeah. And so women emote, and then they lean towards leaders to provide certainty for them, which is genetically how they're wired. That's fine. But now we're being told to do that as men. Well,
one thing that's quite interesting, actually, is that before this whole the virus kicked off and everything, or just in the early stages of it, we did a show. We had a Rule Zero show, which I think was actually on my channel, and it was about the virus. And basically, we were taking a very measured approach to it, and we were kind of saying, "Listen, guys, don't worry, keep calm, et cetera, et cetera." And at the time, you'd be amazed how many comments we got from guys going, "No, you guys, you're going to have to take this down. This is going to be, this. You guys, you're not taking this seriously," and everything else. And now, fast forward to the end of the year, and pretty much everybody is sort of now somewhat skeptical. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying by the way, I'm not saying the virus isn't real. I'm not saying none of that kind of stuff. It absolutely is. But certainly the panic that was coming through from other dudes was really palpable, and people were sort of almost supporting restriction measures and stuff like that. I mean, now you go on Twitter and everybody's anti it, but they weren't at the beginning. It was so it just kind of shows you that emotionalism sort of coming through, even in a space like this.
Oh yeah,
I would say it all comes down to. I'm going to do like a 60-second closing comment just for do this fast. I think the main thing we have to learn from all of this is that men have to stop looking for tribes. We're innately wired to look for our tribe.
Yeah.
But to quote Groucho, don't be a member of any tribe that wants to have you as a member. Any tribe that will just let you in without forcing you to make your value known to them and earning your place isn't worth being a member of. And from where I'm coming from here is like every guy who's sitting there and he's like, yeah, we won the Super Bowl. No, a bunch of black dudes won the Super Bowl. You were sitting on your ass on your couch drinking beer, watching them play. Like, we won the election. No, a bunch of other dudes with a lot of money behind them won the election. You were sitting on the ass watching them play. Don't be the guy who puts another man's name on you, sits there and gets all your validation from the fact that other men won, and then be like, yes, we did it. No, you had nothing to do with it, dude. You had nothing to do with it. You may as well be dead to those guys. They wouldn't want to shake your hand if they met you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a dude in the chat going mental about the election, about Sidney. He's typing all in capitals, game warden, talking about Sidney Powell and all this kind of stuff. And a couple of guys. Sidney Powell is the lawyer that the Trump campaign have now distanced themselves from, but who is suing, I think, in Pennsylvania.
Oh, so you're saying Cindy and Kathy were talking behind the accounting desk, and oh my God, what'll happen next week on this fucking bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, and then Chester Rockwell's come in and said there isn't sufficient evidence. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is going off into the weeds now a little bit, but I mean, I was reading a thread yesterday that completely took apart the Sidney Powell, the document that she's presented to the court. I mean, we'll see what happens.
One person's opinion matters.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But look, I mean, either way, I mean, why are we so bothered about this? Do you know what I mean? Like, of course, I understand people have concerns around Biden and everything else. But in the end, whoever gets it, whoever's in the big chair, whoever's got the big job, you're still going to have to get on with your life. You're still going to have to do your day-to-day life, right? And fundamentally, that's what matters. That's my attitude on it anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was an election here. There's an election here last year. It could have gone towards Jeremy Corbyn, who was quite a hard left candidate. It ended up going to Boris Johnson. I mean, I was interested. Obviously, I had my opinions and stuff like that. But in the end, I just got on with my own stuff, because that is the thing that's going to, you've got to, particularly in this economy, in this society that we're living in this period of immense change and uncertainty, you've got to look after your core self.
Yeah. Well, perfect example, Paul. Depending on whether Trump or Biden are there in January, is there any part of your life that you have to substantially change based on that fact?
Not really much. I still
Like
work.
throw away the maggot hat and buy a Biden pin, maybe. That's about it.
I mean, I still do work with the National Guard. So if there's policy changes and stuff like that within the DoD, that'll affect me. But at the end of the day, I've altered my strategy here into basically taking care of myself and not being, we're on this decline and there's nothing I can do to stop it. And I think that's what, from the United States, guys in the United States perspective, like, Troy and Ryan, you're in Canada, but my perspective, what we see here is
we're behind you a bit. We're the little brother. I get it.
Right. But well, you're ahead though with socialism in the slide into more of a socialist structure though, I think. Whereas we've been staving off falling. I don't know, maybe that's what it seems
we
like.
are.
Yeah,
I think that's a myth. I think you guys mistake our parliamentary democracy for socialism.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we see like things like your national health care and some of the different policies being a little bit more socialist than some of our policies here. But I mean, maybe not. Yeah.
Anyways, this is like a weird conversation.
Yeah, it's okay.
I actually
maybe
wouldn't mind
not,
doing
right?
this with you later, though. Like,
yeah,
on a
that would be
different
cool. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. But I mean, it's so maybe it's the same. You guys are experiencing the same thing, but we're seeing a slide into more of a socialist structure and losing that independence, that value of each person being, somewhat sovereign and having that ability to build wealth and to do so, to have that opportunity versus the government consolidating your wealth and then taking care of things for you, slide away from individualism into collectivism. And so guys are watching this decline and they're trying to stop it and they're upset about it. And I get it. You know what I mean? It's upsetting to me too. Sometimes it was upset. I mean, not upsetting, like I'm going to cry about it, but it sort of sucked.
Pat Stedman, do you know that dude? That dude, Pat Stedman on Twitter, he cried when Trump first got elected in 2016, apparently, because he was so happy.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, like that's a little much,
guy
right?
The dick.
Yeah, really. Like I was in Afghanistan prior to COVID and prior to like all of the rioting, and that was what I came back in the middle of, it was April going into May, in the middle of everybody's on lockdown, quarantine, COVID stuff, where now rights and the ability to do things, like people are being taken away from people over a virus that I'm not saying isn't a risk, but at the time it seemed very overblown. I came back. The governor in our state is very draconian. She's one of the worst in the 50 states. I came back to people rioting over nothing, in my opinion. And then us we're letting people take over in certain places, taking over cities. I mean, we let this, what was it, Chaz take over Seattle? Like, what was that? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm like, why did I just, why am I trying to, whether we should be in other places or not, it's another story.
Hey, unemotional thing. We gotta end this one up. We're hitting the 2-hour mark, but all the businesses around that area are suing the fuck out of the city now to get paid for this. I'm like, that's a good response.
Yeah. So I mean, I just wrap it up, but it's like, you see this decline and you have two choices. You can get really mad about it and try to fight it, but not be able to really have that effect, or you can just start taking care of yourself. Right. And so I'm taking care of myself. I plan on having some property in a couple of years in South America or some different places for vacation, Airbnb. And if things get bad enough, I can go do that for a couple months, go live somewhere else for a couple months, setting myself up so I'm a little bit more financially independent and I'm not bound to an area. I can go to another country if things get bad in my country and start taking care of your family, taking care of yourself. Doesn't mean I'm not going to, still express views and, encourage people to vote for things like freedom and whatever. But, you got to take care of yourself first and stop emoting about the decline. You just have to accept what's happening.
Yeah. And that is very much the sort of libertarian, in inverted commas, view. If you look at that book, How to Have Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown, it's very much all about that. And I'm totally on board with that as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are certain things you can control, certain things you can have a view, you can have your say on social media, but you can't really control it. And so what are you ultimately going to do?
So speaking of which, guys, let's spend the last couple minutes chilling. More Troy, more Paul. I want more Troy and more Paul. Where do I go? How do I get there? And where is it?
Get on my OnlyFans.
Well, mine's the shortest. I'll start because I don't do enough. I'm really doing a fraction of what I need to be doing. I am working through doing my side of the editing on a book. Then it'll go to the professional editor will do more work, and then I don't know what other steps happen, but then bam, it's a book. So it's pretty detailed, actually. It's almost about 400 pages of material. So that's going to be coming out probably within the next couple months. I know I need to do courses and stuff like that. I've been working on developing some of those, but main thing is get on my channel, Apex Mindset. If and just support the channel. If you're interested in anything I'm doing or whatever, things that are going to be coming out, get there. That's basically it for me. What was I going to say? There's one more I'm missing. That's enough though for now, I guess. Yeah.
All right, guys, check them out. All right, Commonwealther, lead us to the promised land.
To the promised land, absolutely. All right, guys. So follow me on YouTube. Type Troy Francis in, and you will find my wonderful channel. Join me over there. I'll be live streaming every day next week, because next week my course, Charisma and Dating Academy, opens up for new students between the 1st and the 5th of December. So there's a 5-day enrollment period. Okay, this course will take you from Chode to Chad within about a month. It's basically a 10-hour video course. We do a week's worth of live Zoom webinars as well. I teach you everything I've ever learned about charisma, about mindset, about the dark triad stuff, how to be the bad boy, radical differentiation, looking different, standing out from the crowd, how to have that sex appeal when you just walk in and have an interaction with a woman. This is the kind of thing that you need to know, regardless of whether you do day game, whether you do night game, or whether you meet girls on social media apps or on the dating apps, because ultimately you're still going to have to meet up with her in real life. You're still going to have to make that great impression. You're still going to have to make it click. Okay, so this is natural, authentic game. And on Monday, I'm going to be doing a free Zoom webinar. So go to my channel and subscribe, and you'll get the Zoom details when I release them on Monday. I'm going to be doing a live free Zoom webinar in the evening. It's going to be 11 p.m. UK time. That's 6 p.m. EST. And in that, I'll be going through some in-field demonstrations. I'll show you real interactions with real life girls, and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, and how you can make it click. Okay. So join me on Monday. And as I say, CAD Academy is open for new students next week. $497 for all of that value.
All right. On that note, guys, thanks for sticking around. God knows we had a nice rotation of everybody coming in. I kind of like that. It's like in college when buddies used to come over and then leave, and there's always a group.
Yeah.
Anyway.